In 1626, a Dutch trader named Peter Minuit supposedly bought the island of Manhattan for goods worth about $24. $24. Today, Manhattan is worth trillions. Now here's the question that turns this little history story into a psychological thriller. Did the Dutch out-negotiate the Native Americans, or did both sides think they won? Because historians later realized something fascinating. The Native Americans probably thought they were granting temporary land use, not selling it permanently. Two parties, one negotiation, two completely different interpretations of the deal. And that, my friends, reveals the first secret of negotiation. The most powerful forces in negotiation are usually invisible. Today, we're diving deep into the four pillars of negotiation: leverage, BATNA, timing, and concessions. Master these, and you'll realize something shocking. Negotiation is not about talking, it's about power geometry. The myth of the best talker. Most people think negotiation is about being persuasive, charisma, fast talking, smooth lines. Hollywood loves this myth. But the truth? The best negotiators in the world often say very little. One of the greatest negotiators in modern history was Thomas Schelling, the economist who won the Nobel Prize for his work on negotiation strategy. Schelling discovered something profound. Negotiation is not primarily a conversation, it is a structure of incentives. Imagine two people negotiating over a car. Person A says, "I want $20,000. Person B says, "I'll pay $15,000. This looks like negotiation, but the real negotiation is happening somewhere else entirely, behind the curtain, in the invisible question, who can walk away? And that brings us to the first pillar, leverage, the gravity of negotiation. Leverage is the gravitational force of negotiation. It pulls the outcome toward one side. The person with leverage doesn't push harder, they simply weigh more in the system. Let me give you a real-world example. In 1973, during the OPEC oil embargo, oil-producing countries suddenly restricted supply. The world panicked. Gas lines formed across America. Economies trembled. Why? Because OPEC had leverage. Not because they were better negotiators, but because they controlled something scarce, and scarcity is the raw material of leverage. The formula is simple. Leverage equals control over something the other side needs. Jobs, resources, information, time, access. Even silence can be leverage. Which leads us to the second pillar, a concept that sounds like a secret agent code. BATNA, your secret weapon. BATNA stands for Best Alternative to a Negotiated Agreement. The concept was developed at Harvard's program on negotiation by Roger Fisher and William Ury in their famous book, Getting to Yes. Here is the idea. Before you negotiate anything, ask yourself one question. What happens if this deal fails? Because the best negotiator is not the one who wants the deal the most. It's the one who needs it the least. Imagine two job candidates negotiating salary. Candidate A desperately needs the job. Candidate B already has 3 offers. Who has the power? Candidate B. Not because they talk better, but because their BATNA is stronger. A strong BATNA is like carrying a parachute. You negotiate differently when you know you can jump. In fact, experienced negotiators sometimes improve their BATNA on purpose before negotiating. They create options, they build alternatives, they engineer escape routes. Because every option you have increases one thing, your freedom. And freedom is negotiation power. But power alone is not enough, because negotiation also obeys another invisible force. Timing. The clock is a weapon. Most people treat time like a neutral background, but negotiators know something different. Time is a weapon. Let me show you how. During the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962, the United States and the Soviet Union were negotiating while the world stood on the edge of nuclear war. President John F. Kennedy delayed certain responses. He slowed the tempo. Why? Because every hour increased pressure on the Soviet leadership. Ships were approaching the blockade. The clock was ticking. Eventually, the Soviets removed the missiles.
Negotiation didn't end with a dramatic speech. It ended with time pressure. In business negotiations, deadlines often create the same effect. Deals that take months to move suddenly close 5 minutes before the deadline. Why? Because time collapses options, and when options collapse, power shifts, which leads to the fourth pillar, concessions, the dance of give and take. Imagine two children negotiating over a cookie. One says, "I want the whole cookie." The other says, "I want half." Eventually, they agree on half. Seems fair. But here's the twist. The person who makes the first concession often shapes the entire negotiation. Why? Because concessions set the anchor. Behavioral economists call this the anchoring effect. Once the first number enters the conversation, the entire negotiation revolves around it. This is why experienced negotiators make slow, strategic concessions. Never fast, never free. Every concession must have 3 properties: small, reciprocal, visible. In other words, if you give something, make sure the other side feels it. Negotiation is not arithmetic, it's psychology. The deep rabbit hole. Negotiation is everywhere. Here's where things get strange. Negotiation is not just something lawyers or CEOs do. It's everywhere. Parents negotiating bedtime, countries negotiating borders, friends negotiating where to eat. Even biology negotiates. Inside your body, trillions of cells constantly negotiate resource allocation, energy, oxygen, nutrients. Your entire existence is a negotiation ecosystem, which means something fascinating. If you understand negotiation, you understand power in human systems. The master negotiator paradox. After decades of research, experts discovered a paradox. The best negotiators do less negotiating. They prepare more. They build leverage. They strengthen BATNAs. They control timing. They structure concessions. By the time the conversation begins, the outcome is often already tilted, which means the real negotiation doesn't happen at the table. It happens before the table exists. Final thought: the quiet power. The world often celebrates loud persuaders, but negotiation history tells a different story. The real masters are often quiet, observant, patient. They understand that negotiation is not about domination, it's about designing the field where decisions happen. So the next time you enter a negotiation, remember the 4 invisible forces: leverage, BATNA, timing, and concessions. Master these, and you'll start seeing negotiations everywhere, even in places you never noticed before. The next lesson. If you found this fascinating, type power in the comments, because in the next video, we're diving deep into something even deeper: the psychological tricks negotiators use to control perception. And trust me, once you see those, you'll never hear the phrase, "Let's make a deal," the same way again.